Aeham Ahmad from Syria fled war in his homeland. Saša Stanišić from Bosnia fled genocide in his homeland. Antonio Skármeta from Chile fled an occupational ban in his homeland. Judith Kerr from Germany fled the Nazis. Nneka Egbuna from Nigeria fled violence in the family. 5 people who have one thing in common. They had to make fresh starts in strange countries.
We all wanted to be German. By all means, the Russians wanted to be German. The Iranian girls, they all went and did. Some of them even did eye surgeries to get blue eyes and blonde hair. So we were all in competition, trying to be German.
Nneka Egbuna came to Hamburg in 1999 at the age of 19. Her German mother had left her when she was just 2. After that, she grew up with her father and stepmother in Nigeria. She would rather not talk about why she left, but her brother wrote a book in which he tells how the stepmother terrorized, abused, and starved the children. In Nigeria, she was forced to do the housework. In Hamburg, she enjoys cooking Nigerian specialties.
Yeah, that was a time where I definitely felt more like a stranger here in the beginning, you know, coming here, thinking half of my life that I was half white, and, or better to say, like, they call it half caste in our country, which is a name for people who are mixed or who have certain privileges. Coming to Germany, I realized that that was not the case when somebody called me a nigger. Oh, you're a nigger. Oh, I'm a nigger. Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Aeham Ahmad ended up in Wiesbaden in 2016, having fled the war in Syria. His trek took him through Turkey, Greece, Serbia, Croatia, and Austria before he finally reached Germany. In Wiesbaden, he shares a 10-square-meter room with 5 other men in a refugee hostel. His wife and their 2 small sons are still in Syria.
I feel very shame because I am in Germany safe with my friend and with my uncle, and the people still dying in Yarmouk or still dying in Damascus or still Damascus now without water. You can't save all the people together. You feel you will decide to save yourself and your family. It's very different time for me. I miss my boys, my wife, and my father and my mother.
Aeham Ahmad was born and raised in this Palestinian refugee camp in Yarmouk, near Damascus. He learned to play the piano at the age of 5. He was still playing when Islamists overran and laid waste to Yarmouk in 2015.
A lot of horrible things happen. The most horrible things when Zainab, she's sitting near the piano and sing with me, and we have sniper. I listen, and I see the little girl dying near the piano. And these are the horrible things in my mind. I don't think about how the human rights or this little girl, we see it and we sing, we don't make anything.
Aeham cannot forget what he saw. Now he fears for his family, who are still in Syria.
When the first 5,000 Bosnian refugees arrived in Germany on special trains, they received a warm welcome. Public willingness to help and make donations was running high. The wartime suffering was etched on the refugees' faces, as was their gratitude for the fact that Germany offered them refuge.
Saša Stanišić is one of those 5,000. He and his parents arrived in Heidelberg, where an uncle lived, in the summer of 1992. He was 14 years old and knew 2 words of German, Lothar Matthäus. The family applied for asylum and had to wait months to find out if they could stay.
There's all this uncertainty. Even if you make it somewhere else, you could be deported to a country where you're not welcome at all, and to which you do not want to return. Those 3 months were awful for me and my family. They were.
The Stanišić family were put up in Heidelberg Emmertsgrund, a socially deprived area with many ethnic minorities. He would later say the place that made the most effort to integrate people was a gas station. He wrote, "There in the parking lot, we taught each other bad German and how to install car radios."
The fact that we were not from Germany did not play such a major role in Emmertsgrund, which was a cultural melting pot anyway. At the same time, there was always a kind of competition among the ethnic groups. So it wasn't just a case of peacefully holding hands and going to school together. Usually the Poles stuck with the Poles and the Turks with the Turks. But there are also outstanding examples of people mixing through love stories or common interests like football or sport in general.
The Nneka Bridge in Heidelberg helped him to feel at home too. It reminded him of the bridge in his hometown, Visegrad. Except here, it was safe. Judith Kerr had to leave her homeland too. She was just turning 10 when the National Socialists seized power in Germany in 1933. She fled to Switzerland with her older brother Michael.
Family is everything, especially for a child.
I always felt safe.
But less so during the war, when the bombs fell. Our home was destroyed by bombs, you know, but our family was there for us.
Judith Kerr had a sheltered upbringing in a comfortable part of Berlin. The Kerrs were Jewish, but not especially devout. Her father, Alfred Kerr, was a famous theater critic and an opponent of the Nazis. One night in February 1933, under the cover of darkness, the family abandoned their home in the leafy Berlin suburb of Grunewald. Just in time, too, the secret police were on the verge of canceling their travel papers. The Nazis confiscated everything the Kerrs had to leave behind. From Switzerland, their flight took them to Paris. It was a big adventure for a 10-year-old.
I loved it. I was very happy in Paris. It was lovely. My mother learned French cuisine. Never before had we eaten so well. Paris was wonderful. Apparently, I once said to my father, it was dark and our apartment was on a very high floor because the rent was lower when you lived higher up. And from our little balcony, you could look out over Paris. And apparently, I said to my father, is it not great to be a refugee? That must have amused him. Because it must have been unbelievably hard for my parents.
Her father tried without success to sell his work. As the money ran out, the parents grew more desperate.
My mother said, I only found this out later, that she wanted to commit suicide in Paris. It was in some letter from my father that someone found.
Selbstmord begehen und ein Brief von meinem Vater.
He said she wanted to take the two of us with her, my brother and me.
Sagte, und wollte uns auch mitnehmen, mein Bruder und mich.
I was shocked, of course.
Ich war erschüttert davon.
And I saw the date on the
Ich sah
letter.
das Datum auf dem
I had
Brief.
only just learned
Ich
French.
dachte, da hatte ich doch gerade Französisch gelernt.
It would have been very annoying to have to die just when I was learning to speak French.
Wäre gerade als ich Französisch konnte.
In the 1970s, Berlin, the city Judith Kerr once fled, became a place of refuge for people fleeing persecution. Many of them came from Chile.
My name is
Antonio Skármeta. I am a writer from Chile. I left Chile in 1973 because of a coup d'etat against the democratically elected president Salvador Allende that led to a military dictatorship in my country. I have been living in West Berlin with my family for 8 years.
Seit 8 Jahren wohne ich in West-Berlin mit meiner Familie.
Antonio was lucky. Through family connections, he got a scholarship from the German Academic Exchange Service.
I decided to leave the country of my own free will. I was not tortured a single time. I just lost my job, which is very little compared to the suffering other people went through.
For here, where today's concert goers wait for their star to perform, was a place of torture and murder. After the putsch, the military interned thousands of people in the soccer stadium. People were indiscriminately arrested and tortured. The stadium became a concentration camp under the new ruler, Augusto Pinochet. "100 people were confined to a single locker room and had to share 2 toilets. More than 2,000 men and women were murdered. More than 1,000 are still missing today. Antonio Skármeta is safe, but as a writer, he lived off his language. Now he had to get by in a strange country whose language he did not speak.
I was reunited with my family when I got to Germany. At the time, I had 2 sons of 7 and 5 years of age. To make a long story short, I must say the 2 learned the language very quickly, and the conversations I had, including with German journalists, for example, or when the telephone rang. The people spoke very fast on the telephone, and when someone called me and offered me something or asked me a question, I would pass the receiver to my son, and my son would answer for me.
Like Antonio Skármeta's children, Saša Stanišić learned German quickly. In Heidelberg, he attended a special school for immigrants. The Bosnian boy's German and history teachers gave him extra attention.
They were more than just teachers, they were great people. They looked after us and did not just work to rule. They were there for us, and they understood various aspects of our situation.
When he went to university, he moved from the outskirts of Heidelberg to the town center. The only reason he was allowed to stay in Germany was that he had a chance of going to college. His parents' applications for permanent residency were rejected, and they emigrated to the U.S. In a way, he was lucky.
I know without a doubt that mine was a single fate, and that it was an exception rather than the rule. But I don't have dark skin, and you can't necessarily see that I'm not a German. As bad as that is, it makes all things easier in Germany.
Nneka Egbuna, who has dual German-Nigerian citizenship, is sometimes reminded of this. But she also enjoys newfound freedoms.
I had never been in a place where, you know, where you could say you want something and you get it immediately, like have access to education free, and having, you know, just having your own space, your own room, your own bed, your own time where you could just shut the door and say, this is my time now. So I think having that kind of also definitely helped me grow and gain an identity, find out who I really am.
Right from the start, she soaked up all things German. She learned the language, went to school and university, but her heart was in something else.
I started like recording myself on my little deck, and then I met Farhad, and then we decided to explore more, you know, Hamburg, the underground sessions that we used to do in different parts, just doing music for love, not, you know, not for the money, not for competition, just doing it. And he introduced me to a different side of making music. Like, he brought hip-hop into my life. Though I already think I was hip-hop before, but he kind of like just, you know, he educated me a lot on hip-hop. And I, on the other hand, being an African, introduced the African side to him. And then being in Germany, it's just like, you know, it was like an amazing mix.
Her mixture of dub, soul, reggae, and Afrobeat went down well, and in 2005, Nneka released her first album. 4 more followed, along with tours of Europe and the US. Her songs are about God and family, but also about violence, environmental destruction, and social injustices in Nigeria.
I know, oh, I've never been found. It's dark, and we're all blind. In solitude we're no good. In public we don't act good. Is it destiny? Is it meant to be? I hope in the first place that the music that I do is able to, you know, transcend the physical and be part of people's lives, touch them, move them, motivate them, empower them in a spiritual way.
Nneka sings in Pidgin English and English, her mother tongue. It is a language in which she feels and thinks. There was a time when she would rather have forgotten about her African roots. Today, her African heritage is part of her. His native language was not all that the writer Antonio Skármeta lost when he fled Chile. He lost his subject matter, too.
I sensed that it was pointless to continue talking in the same terms and language, addressing the same subculture and subconscious as I did when I communicated with my Chilean readers. My work had many references to Chilean soccer players, to movie stars, to the streets and districts of the city, to what I shared in common with other Chileans. But now I was experiencing something else, which could be very big: the experience of exile.
It was a turning point. Life in exile was to become Antonio Skármeta's most important literary theme. It was to play a role in many of his works.
I wrote a novel called No Pasó Nada, Nothing Happens. It is the story of an exiled boy brought here by his parents. I don't recall exactly, about 14 years old. No Pasó Nada is a novel strictly about exile, a tale of exile from the point of view of youth.
The young Chilean Lucho is torn. He's in love with a German girl, but his Chilean parents want him to take part in solidarity events for Chilean dissidents.
The exile tells of his life, of his exiled parents, of his friends in school, of his first love, of how he falls in love with a girl who sells records at a music store, of their first dates, of the pizzas they enjoyed, of the magazines they read and the music they listened to. How to learn German by listening to the lyrics of songs while walking down the street, wearing headphones, and singing along to learn the songs. Okay, we always try to do things with the whole family. For example, Gabriel plays piano, blues and jazz, and he is very sad. Huh? And for example, an everyday situation, we were all very sad when school started again after vacation time. So I decided to write a blues song for Gabriel.
Ahora mismo entro. Well, today is the first day. I'm going to school. Today is the first day. I'm going to school.
The experiences Antonio Skármeta describes in No Pasó Nada are similar to those of his sons. They grew up in between worlds.
Children learn languages very quickly and quickly establish relations with their peers. In our case, we had to leave our country, and it was very interesting to see how children adapted to the different rules of play. First, they had allegiances to their parents, who could not live in their homeland. Secondly, they had allegiances to themselves, their futures, their prospects, to their peers, their music, the streets, and the excitement of a new language. They had to reconcile two different worlds, the world outside, which called out to them saying, "Live with me," and the world of their parents, which called out, "Think of your country, remember, and think of the time when we can return." No, we were always sure that we would return to Chile. We just hoped and waited for it to be possible sometime.
In 1989, the military dictatorship finally came to an end in Chile. Antonio returned to Santiago with his second wife, a German. Their two older sons stayed on in Berlin. For them, Chile was no longer home. Aeham Ahmad also yearns for his homeland, Syria. He misses his piano, too. The IS Islamists, for whom music is sacrilege, burned it. Here in Germany, a music store allows him to play. Aeham's father was an instrument maker and had his own store back in Syria, For much of his life, he dreamed of taking over the store from his father.
Yes, when I am still in Syria, it's my dream when I have my home and have piano, Bosendorfel in the home, but now it's my dream to have peace and sit with my family. We make everything in the shop, and I teach the children or the young people in my shop. Yes, I have Aeham للموسيقى. It's Aeham for music, his name, the shop.
People come to hear Aeham's music and his stories.
Today it's a pleasure for me to play the song again in Kassel with a beautiful friend. We will play song from Yarmouk and song from Germany. Make some things happen. Maybe we can change this crazy war going to down and down. يا شعبي الغالي يا مهجر بكفي برا تتمرمر يلا عودوا يا أحباب بكفينا طال الغياب يا شعبي الغالي يا مهجر بكفي برا تتمرمر يلا عودوا يا أحباب بكفينا طال الغياب.
Aeham's father wanted him to become a concert pianist, but a shrapnel wound in his left hand dashed those hopes. Now he plays to bring attention to the suffering in Syria.
I play in big stage, in a beautiful piano, but it's not my dream. Some from your dream to be a musician in somewhere to play in Steinway, but it's not my dream only. It's my dream to still in my country and fight for peace. It's coming a lot of things for me, and this is why I don't smile when I going to. I have a lot of things in my heart and in my mind still exists from Syria and from the war.
When Aeham Ahmad had been in Germany without his family for a year, this Arab supermarket was the closest he came to home. Many of his relatives and friends died in their attempts to flee Syria. As the battles raged, the war has triggered Europe's biggest refugee crisis since the Second World War. After his family had to close down its music store, Aeham Ahmad sold falafel in Syria. Sometimes he plays concerts here, but he doesn't have a steady job. In August 2016, his wife Tahani and 2 children finally got permission to join him in Germany, and they moved into an apartment in Wiesbaden. But his parents were still in Yarmouk, where water and food were running out and the war continued.
It's for me the music physiotherapy. When I don't play concert, I will play it in the bathroom, the music. It's still in my blood. I need to get it out, you know. These things, it's not about concert, but I like to play piano in my house with my boys and wash dishes or make it falafel, because I still not exist myself pianist. This is not a change when the people tell me you are a great pianist. Thank you. But great pianist, it's need a lot of things to do it. بعدي هجرة وقتل وخطف وجوع قلبي تمزع بين الروع تنزف دم ونار ونور.
At least he has his own piano again now. But he would still rather go back to Syria with his family. Nobody knows if that will ever be possible. Even when the war is over, it will take decades to rebuild the country and clear the landmines. But he will still be homesick. In Heidelberg, the writer Saša Stanišić made his new language his living.
Throughout the entire flight, the Asian had been sucking sweets, and every time he opened one, he folded the wrapper carefully into a square and stuffed it into the pocket on the back of the seat in front of him. Eventually, it was overflowing with little squares of sweet wrappers. Georg Horvath was ignored by the Asian. Normally, he would have been happy with that, but this time he felt that the Asian was deliberately ignoring him, as if to say, I'm not bothered with you, I'd prefer to bother with the sweets. And the fifth is, Dear Mr. Horvath, where are you? Thank you very much. After my first novel, I found it hard to read in public. I had the feeling that people could see that German is not my mother tongue, that this was something I've consciously been working on for the past 8 to 10 years, to make it go away from my vocabulary because it gets in the way. So I notice myself when I'm with writers who have the same tendency, and then I pay great attention until a balance has been reached on emphases and mistakes. And I believe that because I've practiced something and achieved a certain amount of confidence, that it's helped me be more open and active on stage.
His books talk about his experiences of war and flight, but not only. His second book, Vor dem Fest, or Before the Feast, is based in East Germany. He was awarded the Leipzig Book Fair Prize for it in 2014.
There are 3 areas that are actually essential for successful integration into a city, a country. That things go more or less right at school, that your family relations are intact, and that you are not confined to your own in your social environment, in your circle of friends. Of course, it sounds bad, but you also have to have German friends and Vietnamese or whatever.
London in the Second World War. This is where the Kerr family finally ended up as it fled the Nazis. Judith Kerr was 17 when the German Luftwaffe attacked London. While she was working for the Red Cross, her brother Michael was interned as an enemy alien, although as a Jew, he was fleeing persecution by the Nazis. Upon his release, he became a pilot in the Royal Air Force. He felt like a Briton, prepared to defend his country. Meantime, the Kerrs spoke to each other in English only. It was easy for Judith and her brother. They became more and more rooted in British culture.
Am Ende des Krieges war es mir ganz
By the end of the
klar,
war, it was clear to me that this was my home,
mein Zuhause ist. Aber es war es natürlich
but
nicht
not for our
für
parents.
unsere Eltern. Und das war,
They did not belong
die
anywhere.
haben nie irgendwo hingehört.
When the war was over, Judith stayed in England. She worked for the BBC, married and had 2 children. She wanted to tell her family's story, and so wrote and illustrated a book, When Hitler Stole Pink Rabbit. This autobiographic novel is still read by many schoolchildren in Germany. In it, she tells her story from back then, as seen through the eyes of a child.
Aber als ich das rosa Kaninchen fertig
When I had
geschrieben
finished writing The Pink Rabbit, I thought I had written it as honestly as I could. But who would want to read it? I always thought, in real children's books, if things go wrong, the mother can always sew clothes and cook, and the father can chop wood and fix everything. That's not how my parents were. And I thought, can you even describe it in writing? Surely that's all wrong for a children's book.
The book made her world famous. It does not merely tell the moving story of a Jewish family that has to flee from the Nazis. It also reflects on how flight and foreignness affect family members and their relations with each other.
I
could never have written about it while my parents were still alive. I think it's not something you can do. You can't write about people who are still alive and will read it. It's like you have to have some distance before you can write about it. For us, because we were refugees and had to move country again and again and face new difficulties again and again, we were closer than most families. And I thought, I want to write about what happens in a family, how things change. And Hitler was also present for us. But I wanted to write about how things change.
Judith Kerr keeps coming back to Berlin. In the 1990s, she visited a Berlin school named after her. She no longer feels hatred or anger toward the country from which the Nazis expelled her.
When you meet someone older, you always think, what did they do at the time? But at the same time, I remember it well. It was at this primary school, and we were talking about the things that had happened back then. And the teacher said, we all bear guilt for that crime. And I was appalled. These children, how could they be guilty of something that happened while their parents were probably still children?
Was passiert ist, als ihre Eltern wahrscheinlich noch Kinder waren, nicht wahr?
Most of Judith Kerr's stories are written for children. In 2016, she presented a new book in Berlin. Her picture books are about sea lions, forgetful house cats, tigers that come for tea, and daredevil senior citizens. In the audience were many refugees and children of refugees. Judith Kerr went through a lot that is familiar to them.
It's like this. You arrive in a country and don't understand a word, and you think this is impossible. And then suddenly, after a year maybe, you speak the language, and you think in the language, and it's great. And then you think, when you've learned it, everything is possible.
And indeed, much did become possible for Judith Kerr. She made a new home in England and is still writing and exchanging emails at over 90. Nigeria, the home of musician Nneka. Brightly colored, warm, chaotic, worlds apart from northern Germany. The call of home eventually caught up with her.
And that was my first falling back in love, you know, with my country. Better to say falling the first time in love with my country, because I never really saw Nigeria, like saw it the way I maybe should have. When you go away from something you love, you realize how much you love it or how much you hate it.
In Lagos, the biggest city in Nigeria, Nneka sometimes sells her own designs in a friend's store. And in her new German way of seeing things, discovers a different side to the country from which she fled as a child from her violent stepmother.
I love Nigeria. Boom. Take me to Ghana, take me to Sierra Leone, take me wherever you want to take me. I will still come back to Nigeria.
And has Hamburg not become her home too?
Yes, I sometimes do feel at home in Hamburg, and sometimes I don't. Just like anywhere else in the world. Like if I stay in Paris after a certain period of time, I kind of feel like I need to get out. Or if I'm in Lagos, you know, it's the same feeling. But you know, it's nothing negative. I just embrace that feeling and just leave, and then come back when God permits me to come back, which is an awesome life. I don't feel at home nowhere, to be honest. I would lie to you if I felt at home. I'm on my way, and life is a journey.
Flight ended for some in a new homeland, for others back where they came from. Their books, films, and music tell us stories of change, how they changed themselves, but also how they changed the countries they arrived in.